Boys and girls, children of all ages, sim racing fans, wherever you are around the world, thank you very much for tuning in and joining us here on Sim Racing Hub International for the broadcast of Season 2, Round 1 at Brands Hatch. It's the GT4 Championship here at SRHI. Hope you're all doing very well, and we have got a cracker in store for us tonight. It's looking like it's going to be a very busy race on the fantastic Brands Hatch circuit, and I'm joined in the virtual comms box by my good friend and co-commentator Steve Proudly. Steve, how are you, and what do you think we've got in store for us tonight here at Brands Hatch?
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Tim. I'm very, very well, thank you, and very, very excited. GT4 racing, I think it provides some of the closest racing that you get to see within the ACC community, and certainly Brands Hatch is not an easy track. We've also seen in the practice sessions running up to the qualifying that it's been pretty wet, so that's going to be very interesting for the guys. Brands Hatch, very difficult track to overtake. GT4's lots of momentum required, carry lots of corner speed, lots of variation in car characteristics, I think, throughout the GT4 grid with the manufacturers. Some very difficult cars to drive, some cars with quite a lot more top speed compared to some of the others, and different braking characteristics, so it can be very interesting when they're running very close in the opening laps, just watching the different braking points and the different cornering techniques required to hustle some of these cars around the track as quickly as possible. Tim.
Fantastic, yeah, and like you say, these cars unique in their shapes, their sizes, their sounds and their characteristics, but who's going to be the one who gets on top of these tricky conditions? Like you say, it's been horrendous weather so far in the server at Brands Hatch, cold conditions adding to what is a soaked track surface. The drivers will be obviously all running the wet tyres, but is there opportunity here for maybe to try something different in terms of fuel, in terms of line? How can these wet conditions really pose an opportunity for people up and down the grid?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, if it's a wet race session, then there is the option that you can potentially carry a little bit less fuel. You're not going to be revving the engine as hard or as aggressively. It's obviously wet weather just requires that little bit more finesse. But yeah, I think tactic-wise, obviously these guys are going to have to do a mandatory pit stop. They've got to take tyres, they've got to take fuel. I think if it's a wet race, they'll definitely be able to do the race pretty much on a full tank. So if somebody has an issue at the start of the race, gets involved in an incident, it may well be worthwhile just taking an early pit stop and running the race on, change the tyres in the first sort of 5-10 minutes of the race, even if it's that bad, and come out, and you will manage to do the rest of the race on one set of tyres in these conditions and the full tank of fuel. Then you could run in some clear air, which could be quite crucial come the end of the race when everybody else has had to do the pit stops. You could find yourself making your way through the field, as it were, quite easily. But yeah, difficult conditions, and there's some difficult cars out there. We have got a Maserati on the grid, and we all know, or me and you certainly know, Tim, after racing against a Maserati in other championships, how difficult that car can be to drive, especially in these conditions.
Definitely, it's one of those cars that is certainly a unique machine amongst the bunch of GT4s that we're going to see tonight. To touch on what Steve mentioned there, the format for this evening, a half-an-hour qualifying session will decide the grid for a 1-hour race. If you're a fan of the DTM, the format will look pretty similar to you. As opposed to 55 minutes, it's a 60-minute race where drivers are required to stop once for a tyre and fuel change. So here we go. Here is that Maserati that you speak of, Steve, Alexander Witter in the number 78, and we did see him in practice getting the tail out, so I'm pretty sure we'll see more of the same in this qualifying session. The question will be whether he can get a nice clean lap in. He didn't actually spin at all. We saw him going pretty much 90 degrees to the racing direction, but we didn't see him off the track.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's testament to him. He's out there and he's trying his best, but he's certainly up against it. It's not the easiest car to drive in the dry. You've got to be so smooth with the application. There's no traction control, no ABS on that car. It is a beast. I mean, it is a quick car. but it's a beast that takes some taming. As we see there, he's just got all crossed up there, and unfortunately it's just come to an end, and that's going to be the end of that lap, and probably back to the pits and try again. But yeah, he's really up against it, and some of the I just don't know what his tactics can be, apart from just to try and get a clean lap in qualifying and hope that when the session ticks over, it's going to be a dry race, because 60 minutes in a Maserati round Brands Hatch with 30 other cars, 20 odd other cars, 30 other cars, it's not going to be a lot of fun, I don't think, for him tonight.
No, I hope hope Alex has got some water nearby to certainly keep himself fighting fit and hydrated as he wrestles that Maserati around the Brands Hatch circuit. So we're seeing the first lap times come in. Kroll's jumped to the top with a 38.091. Then it's a 1.5 second gap back to Valenduk in the number 301 BMW. So we're starting to see these times come in. The weather radar looking like the rain's going to stick around, if not get slightly more heavy in the closing minutes of this qualifying session. So drivers will be committing to the fact that it's going to be wet for the entirety of this half an hour qualifying session. Maybe there is a chance towards the end of the session to hang it all out with the buffer that in sim racing you can head back to pit lane and get yourself a new car. We can see some fantastic qualifying laps in the last ditch seconds, I suppose. So really, drivers now are going to be out there learning the conditions, seeing where they can push the car, as we see Tim Kroll's drop down to second, really testing the white line on the exit of the final corner onto the start finish straight. Cars really looking in relatively good control at the moment. These guys seem to have, the grid seem to have a nice grip already on the conditions, as it's the 84 of the Camaro. That's Michael Hutman, who's been one of the quick drivers over this championship last time, and indeed in the practice leading up to this race he was in the top 3. So the top 2, as Kroll's actually now bettered him, so we're already starting to see a two-way fight for pole position, separated by 0.07 of a second. It's already beginning to heat up here, Steve, as we see Alexander Delou going close there and actually running off side by side in quali. It's not what you want to be doing.
Absolutely not, because Alexander was actually up on his time as well there, and I think he was just a little bit frustrated maybe with the back marker, as it were, not maybe getting out of his way, although he will have been winding it up for his lap coming through the final corner there, through Clark Curve is where you need to be applying the power to get the maximum run down Bramham Straight. But it's frustrating, the conditions. We're going to see some very big variations on time. I mean, already we've got a 1:37.956 as pole, very closely followed by a 1:38.01, but then it's 7/10 back to third place at the moment, Luke Pound. But Luke is actually currently 2/10 up on this lap, so he can close that gap a little bit, although he's going to have to improve somewhat more to challenge the top 2 at the moment. So yes, the times are very close between the top 2, but the field is spreading out a little bit. The conditions are proving tricky, and we will see, I think, at the end of qualifying, as you said, I don't think any conditions are going to change in the 22 minutes that are left. So I think there'll be a bit of a spread of times throughout the field as the drivers adapt to these wet conditions, as Luke just running a little bit wide onto the grass there, and he has dropped some time now, so he's actually he's almost a second down on his previous best time. So this lap is pretty much just trying to keep some heat in the tyres and go again, I think, for Luke now.
So like you say though, Steve, the field might be spread out in terms of time, but Luke Pound there definitely finding that the field's not spread out on the track, with a really healthy grid this evening, over 30 cars taking to this Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. There's going to be little breathing room, I suppose, out on the circuit to get your lap in, and it's already difficult enough with the conditions, but factor in trying to find track space, and that's another obstacle to climb.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can see Luke now is catching up to the car in front. I'm not quite sure who that is at the moment, but he's catching another car pretty quickly. he's going to hope and pray that Mercedes in front is going to keep the foot in and not get in his way, because again he is at the moment around about a 10th up. Again, he needs to improve. He's dropped down to 4th place now, so yeah, it's the pole time now is a 1:37.395. Second place is a 1:37.956. So there's Seb Spenkelink, who yourself and me both know, Tim, from racing him. He's starting to shine now, and he's currently sat pretty at the top of the pile in pole position.
That is a fantastic lap, and actually the biggest gap we've seen at the top of the field so far this session. So Sam Spenkelink, in the 76 KTM. I was about to say, looking like he's got to grips with the conditions, but he runs on there at Druids off onto the runoff. He'll be happy that there's that extra 5 metres of tarmac on the outside just to help him get back onto the racing surface. But your order, as with 20 and a half minutes remaining, Sem Spenkelink leads the way in the 76 KTM on screen at the moment. A further half a second back is Kroll in the 933 Porsche 718 Cayman. Then we hop back another 10th to Michael Hutman in the 84 Camaro, followed by Luke Pound, Nicholas Melot and Arjen Loermans rounding out your top 6. And actually tied for time with Patrick Tractor in the 313 Janetta in 7th place, Evan Atfas in 8th in the 74 Aston Martin, Andre Brendel in the 331 Camaro is in 9th at 1.5 seconds off the current pole time, and then rounding out the top 10, Alexander Delors in the 6 Porsche, 2 seconds back on pole position. So we are seeing that spread slightly begin to emerge that you were mentioning, Steve.
Yeah, and it's a shame. Lomans was just half a second up there, and he just dipped a wheel onto the grass. He's still going to improve, maybe by about a 10th. He's just losing it coming out of the out of Clark Curve. He hasn't quite gotten the power, so he has improved slightly. He's up to 5th place, but it's still very, very tight there. Tim Kroll at the moment, he's circulating, and he's half a second up on his previous best, so this could potentially move him somewhat closer to that pole position time, although he's half a second, that's still not going to be quite enough to get him there, but he's going to be a lot closer than he was after this lap. Having said that, Danny Deswart just puts in another good time with a 37.6, putting him in second place now, and Sem Spenkelink currently is 8/10ths up on his previous best.
So it's looking like there's certainly some challenges beginning to emerge and show what they can do in these slippery conditions. We'll keep an eye on Deswart. Yeah, he has gone second. That's a really strong time, and now 2/10ths to the pole position man as it stands at the moment. Sem Spenkelink just dealing with some traffic in front of him, might have been able to benefit from a slight toe down the long straight, well, the longest straight here on the tight and twisty Brands Hatch circuit. He's heading out into the Grand Prix loop now into Westfield. The track dips away from you here. It's slightly adverse camber, wants to spit you out to that left hand side, keeping the throttle pinned as you dip through Dingle Dell up into the Sheen curve. It's very easy to run wide over the left hand side there. Spenkelink looking in good control on his way into Sterling's, managing to hold the line, and he does get out onto that curve, which is slippy in the wet. It's definitely something to be aware of, and he's now coming into the final corner at Clark. He needs a strong exit from here, and we could see him just go a touch faster. He might be able to extend the gap at the top of the standings to Kroll, or if not, then we might see a retaliation, and he does. Wow, he really opens up the gap to Kroll there. That's now an 8/10 margin. Fantastic lap from Spenkelink, but it looked clean, Steve. It looked like he was in complete control the whole time there, and that's sometimes what you need in these wet conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. He was pretty smooth. I mean, I have to say I've got the advantage of watching the sector times here, and I can see how if the drivers are up or down at any given time during the lap. And at one point, Sem was a second up, so he improved there by around about 6/10ths. So he literally, there is more to come if he can just put that perfect lap together. If there is a perfect lap in these conditions, it's easy for me to say, I think, and very hard to put into practice for these guys out there on track. But yeah, there possibly is more to come from him, because he did lose around about half a second on potentially what his potential lap time is. But we're seeing the guys, I mean, there we're just looking at Michael just running a little bit wide, and he was up on his time also, but he's now just lost all that time again, and he's literally, this lap is just put down to experience, and hopefully he's got the fuel in the tank, and he'll just keep it wound up now as he goes round Clark Curve and starts another lap and tries to keep this one clean. But yeah, there's a lot of guys out there, they are improving, there's lots of green times coming up on the board, but to try and keep all that time that gained during the lap is proving very, very difficult. All it is taking is literally putting one wheel over the curb onto the grass, and in the dry conditions you may just get away with it, but in these wet conditions you just have to lift off the throttle so much that it costs you, literally it can cost you half a second just putting one wheel off the grass and onto the grass, and half a second, you know, it's a lifetime when you're in qualifying.
Yes, and as you see round the track, these curbs are slippy here at Brands Hatch. That's something that is definitely a factor for these drivers to consider. Normally on a dry lap you might be pushing those red and white curbs to find and extract any possible tenth or hundredth in, or even thousandth in these GT4 cars. The grids can be so closely packed together, but when it's wet, those are dangerous places to be finding your car, and we have seen a number of incidents involving drivers getting two wheels or four wheels off into the grass and over onto these curbs, and they can almost act like a bit of a James Bond oil slick and spin the car round. As we go on board with Denise Pope in the 79 Ginetta, it's great to see Denise hopping across from other competition to have a go here at Sim Racing Hub International, and she looks to be in pretty fine control of this Ginetta this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. We've just seen a little bit of opposite lock and a bit of correction there, as you would expect. I don't think it'll be anything compared to what's going on in that Maserati this evening, but Denise keeping it pretty tidy and currently running in 25th position. Not sure if she's going to improve on this lap. She hasn't, though. She's still in 25th, but yeah, keeping a tight line there into Paddock Hill, and just like I say, just minuscule corrections, but all very important. Just coming into the braking point now as she's running up it through Druids, just running a little bit wide, so just cut it back to the apex, try and keep it all tidy. It's just so difficult in these conditions at the moment that she's level pegging with her current best, so she's still got an opportunity to improve if she can just keep it all tidy, and she's doing a pretty good job of keeping it on the track. She's been very careful, very sure-footed, and just being very precise with that steering input, as we can see.
Well, she was unfortunate on the run down into Graham Hill Bend, Denise having to take a rather suboptimal line to avoid a spun Aston Martin. So if she does improve on this lap, she'll be doing a fantastic effort indeed. So with under half the session remaining, let's just give you a run through the top 10. It's Sem Spenkelink still at the top of the pile in the 76 KTM with a 1 minute 36.750, his best lap so far, followed by Tim Krul in the 933 Porsche at 8 tenths back, a sizable margin. And then in third place we have Danny Dusfort in the 57 Mercedes, also 8 tenths back from pole, so it's a close fight for the front row of the grid, that's for sure. Then in fourth place Michael Huttman in the 84 Camaro, 1.2 seconds back. Then we've got Alexander Delors in fifth in the number 6 Porsche. Then it's Luke Pound in 6th place in the 166 Aston Martin, followed by Arjen Lermans in the 46 Camaro. Then we have Nicolas Malott in the 5 Porsche. Patrick Tractor in the 313 Ginetta is 9th, and rounding out the top 10, Mark Dieters 2 seconds back from pole in the number 77 Aston Martin. The best time of 1 minute 38.775. But actually, if we look at the cars that follow just outside that top 10, Daniel Hoekstra in the 66 Aston Martin is less than 200ths from getting himself into the top 10, which could make all the difference at the start of the race, being just that little bit higher up the grid with a tricky first few corners when the pack's getting the race underway.
Yeah, absolutely. Nicholas is just coming round now in currently 7th, but this is going to improve him. This is going to take him up the grid potentially, and it does, up to 5th place, so that's a good improvement there. I mean, the times, as we said, that there is a wide variation of times, but Sem with almost, he's got 9 tenths on pole position there from Tim Kroll in P2. That's a massive gap, and that's a fantastic drive from Sem. And I said that I think there's, there was more in his lap. Potentially he did lose time on that, but it's hard to see, how he's going to manage to keep that lap together, because 9/10 up, that's already an impressive gap to the other guys, and Tim will be wondering maybe how Sem's managed to get that lap and what does he have to do to try and get anywhere close to him. But going through the field, we're looking at some very, very close times down through the top 10 and into the early teens. They're all sort of pretty much hooked up together, with some of them less than a tenth between them. It's pretty impressive lap times so far, and I think if we get these conditions in the race, it's going to set us up for a very, very tight battle throughout the field tonight.
Definitely, and within this mid-pack, whereas typically you see the best racing in real racing series, it seems that simulated racing also provides that exciting mid-pack battles. Here we are with John Paul Eichel and Boom, who's in the 31 Mercedes, 14th at the moment, 2.1 seconds off pole position as it stands, and he's going to try and see if he can get himself into the top 10, which he won't need to improve that much actually to find himself on those first 5 rows. He's only going to need really a tenth or two, which is certainly out there to be found on a wet track. Sometimes it's just a case of maybe taking a slightly different line, maybe being slightly braver here or there, although we know these guys are going to be pushing to the limit already and have found where those fine margins might be starting to run out. But there is opportunity, Steve, if you can get that lap together, to really find yourself shooting up the order.
Yeah, absolutely. As I was saying there, the lap times sort of mid top 10 down to the teens. Literally, some of them are split by thousandths. So it wouldn't take much of an improvement. A couple of tenths could see you jump a couple of rows on the grid, which could be all important for that first couple of corners through Paddock Hill and through Druids, because we know that Druids can create somewhat of a bottleneck on the first lap. Paddock Hill doesn't like it when everyone tries to go through their 3 and 4 wide. They usually end up with a couple of cars in the kitty litter on the side, costing them time. So yeah, the further forward you can be, usually the better you can be, because you can stay out of trouble and get away clean while everybody else trips over each other. So a couple of rows wouldn't be sniffed at.
So as we head into the final 10 minutes, the final third of this qualifying session, Sem Spenkelink still sits atop the pile with his 1 minute 36.750 lap. And here we go with Daniel Hoekstra in the number 66 Aston Martin, looking like he could go further up the order, but he'll need to get together a nice clean lap, as we were just saying. A little bit of traffic in front. He might be benefiting from a slight tow, but actually the fellow Aston Martin moves aside there, so no advantage on the run to the line, and Hoekstra doesn't improve on that time, so he stays in 5th position and goes on at Paddock Hill after giving it all, I suppose, on that qualifying lap. I'm sure he'll be back out on track in this final 10 minutes to see if he can lay it all on the line for a better lap time. But Nicholas Malott here in the number 5 BMW, currently in 6th place, 1.6 seconds off Sem Spenkelink at the top of the pile, and the Porsche Motorsport liveried Cayman looking like a little bit of a handful. I mean, some would say this is the car to have in these conditions, Steve.
Yeah, the Porsche GT4 car, it's a pretty rewarding car to drive, shall we say, in this class. It's pretty sure-footed, it's pretty honest at every round, and by that I mean that whatever track you go to in the Porsche, you're going to be reasonably competitive if you can, if you've got the setup that you like. It's not the most difficult car to drive in dry conditions. However, in the wet, I don't think there is an easy car out there, because these are not just mildly damp conditions. This is absolutely torrential, and the track is wet through. You can't even see any sort of a line that the cars are taking. There is standing water. You can see the spray coming off the cars. So it's difficult for these guys, and not only have they got the grip levels to worry about, they have got that visibility as well when they're coming up behind cars. It literally can become difficult to see braking markers. We can see here now into Druids, it just starts to get a little bit sketchy, and he just manages to hold the Porsche in nice and tight there, looking to get a good drive now as he's moving on, and it looks like he's abandoning that lap as we took the opportunity to go on board, so we won't complete that lap.
Very true. Well, hopefully we get to finish this lap here with Alexander Delors in the this is the number 6 Porsche, currently sat in 8th position, and like we've been mentioning here, a 2/10 time find for Alexander on a lap would see him jump up a couple of rows, see him just really on the outside of the top 5. So this is an opportunity for him, as we see him running slightly wide out of Westfield. He finds the car getting twitchy on the curb. Those slippery curbs will catch you off guard, rising up the hill into the sheen. He does an excellent job of really jumping over the curb on the inside. That's an opportunity to make up some time through Sterling's, using the camber of the corner really to help the Porsche get around in these quite horrendous conditions here at Brands Hatch, under the bridge and into Clark Curve. All he needs is a good exit. We might see him go slightly faster, just staying over to the right hand side, maybe concerned about letting the car run over to the left and being a victim of the white line on the outside. He's unable to improve on that lap, but I'm sure he'll stick at it. Hopefully he's got the tyres and fuel left in the car to just keep pounding round. But further down the order, Lee Masley here in 19th in the 75 Aston Martin, actually just understeering off rather slowly, and that's sometimes the position you find yourself in these wet conditions. You'll turn yourself into a corner thinking that everything's okay, and just on that particular lap find yourself heading towards the grass.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, it was interesting you commented on the curbs there with the Porsche taking them so well. I mean, at Brands Hatch, you know, up through sort of Dingledale, Sheens, Westfields, all that sort of area, Hawthorns, the back end there, you do need to really take those curbs to get the optimum line. But in these conditions, it's so difficult, and it's a risk every time you do it. You've got to have that car straight. You can't be half-hearted in doing it. You can't be too hesitant or too aggressive with the power. You've just got to keep the car smooth, keep everything balanced, and keep that car pointing in the right direction. It is possible, as we've seen some of the cars doing it, but literally there the BMW just got a little bit crossed up as we were talking about it. You know, it's so difficult, and it's so sketchy. Again, just going over those curbs there, and you can see coming out of the corner how difficult it was for him to get the BMW turned. It looked like he was going to understeer straight on, and I can bet you bottom dollar that he was playing with the throttle there, trying to balance the car, trying to get it turned in on using the power and the brakes alike to just balance the car, set it up for the corner, and carry as much speed as he can to maximise the speed and get the best lap time possible. Yeah, very difficult, but Yannick's just improved by 4/10, I believe, on his time there, and he's up to 17th now, so not a bad lap from him.
So as we head into the final 4.5 minutes of this qualifying session, Sem Spenkelink still at the top of the pile with that 36.7, really looking untouchable at the moment, followed by Tim Krull in the 933 Porsche. Then it's Desfort in the 57 Mercedes, Michael Huttman in 4th place in the 84 Camaro, 1.2 seconds back, and Daniel Hoekstra rounds out the top 5 in the 66 Aston Martin. And this is Michael Huttman here. He's going to need, I mean, really, he's got to find 4/10, and you think that up to this point in the session, drivers might have already found the maximum lap time they can offer. But as we previously mentioned, it's we might see some guys heading out for a do-or-die final run with 3 minutes to go. But I suppose the risk is here that you can't get the tyres warmed up, you can't get the car warmed up, and you can't get those all-important pressures into those wet Pirellis under these GT4 cars.
No, absolutely not, and we all know from driving the GT4s, tyre temperatures can be incredibly difficult to maintain, and very difficult to achieve the optimum temperature. And I mean, in these conditions, obviously that is made doubly hard. It depends a lot on your setup of the car, and setting up the car to get temperature into the tyres is always a compromise from between grip wear and, you know, general turning and temps and things like that. It is difficult, and it's a balancing act, and it's just whoever's got that right combination on the night, because obviously, you know, like I say, you know yourself from pushing the cars, the front tyres especially on the GT4s are notoriously hard to maintain those temps, and it's the all-important temps that just increase that grip, as we see him taking the curbs there very aggressively and just getting a little bit crossed up now as he just comes into Druids. At this current moment in time, he is actually 3/10 up as he goes a little bit wide there, so he's going to lose all that time, and indeed he does. So really unfortunate then for Mikel, but it was looking good up to that point. But yeah, the tyres are going to play a big part tonight in who's got the best setup regarding keeping getting temps in there and getting the maximum amount of grip from those front tyres, because I think one of the biggest problems with most of the GT4 cars is when you start to lose the temps and you lose that traction, the grip, it's just the understeer that follows basically.
Yes, and indeed a very liberal use of the track limits from Mikael Hutland there on the opening sector here at Brands Hatch. I suppose he has got enough time to get it all calmed down and try and go again. We might see an improvement here, because I suppose that's what the wet conditions offer. There is an opportunity to win that time back if you can do something rather spectacular towards the end of the lap, but still really out the front. And the pace setters, we see Hutland run wide through Sheen. That's going to write this lap off. He needs to be careful rejoining, and he's actually pulled off to the side there. But Luke Pound here in the 166. Luke Pound racing Aston Martin's currently sat in 5th place, 1.3 seconds off the pole with a 38.094 at the moment. He's been out on lapping, Luke. He's got 10 laps under his belt with really just around a minute to go, so he has just as much experience around this track as the rest of the guys in these conditions. And as we see him really toying with track limits on the exit of Surtees up on the run down the Dingle Dell into Hawthorns, we could see Luke go a little bit faster here.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a couple of tenths up there at the beginning of the lap. He's lost a little bit of time, but he's only a tenth down at the minute. And as you said previously, you can make that time back up in these conditions, because I think everyone's got more time in the laps if they can just string that perfect lap together. So he's still not giving up. He's still trying. Although that deficit now is we take a massive cut there, just to try and gain a bit of time back. But he's 3 tenths down, so I don't think we're going to see Luke improve on this lap. Although I think he's going to get across the line for sure, and he's probably going to try and carry on and do a last-minute dash on the last lap he's got now. This is going to be his last opportunity to try and improve, and in fact he's not done himself any favours there, run wide, and I think that's his qualifying over.
Yeah, rather unfortunate turn of events there for Luke Pound, as Alexander Delors here in the number 6 Porsche, 9th place at the moment. There's a Camaro off to his left-hand side, which stays well out of the way. No rejoining there as the timer ticks over to 0. That's the session over. Drivers will need to complete their laps before the 5-minute timer runs out, but they should all get around. If you're setting a lap longer than that, then you've got no chance of challenging the order. But Spenkelink looking pretty happy at the top of the standings at the moment. In fact, he's in pit lane. A number of cars are in pit lane, only a handful still out there trying to better their lap. I suppose the difference is to a dry session where the track's getting more rubbered in, or at least a session that's going from wet to dry. You're going to see the best conditions at the end of the session. But Delors here hoping to go quicker, and he does. He jumps up to, I think that was about 5th place there, just as this last gasp opportunity. Yeah, he does indeed. So up to 5th place from Delors, just over a second back on the leaders. But a very interesting session for sure there, Steve. We saw some pretty quick laps early on in the session, and it seemed that no one could better themselves in the second half, really.
No, absolutely not. It seemed like everybody managed to get the laps in early doors, and they found that grip level. And once Sem got that lap in the KTM there, almost a second quicker than anybody else, he just didn't look like he was going to get challenged at all, did he? For the rest of the session, I don't think anybody came close. And as I said, with a 1:36.750, that's a pretty impressive lap in these conditions when you consider he's 8.5 tenths faster than Tim Kroll in second place. We've got De Swart in third place, who is 0.882 back, so he's literally 3/100ths more or less behind Kroll. So that was very, very close battle for second place on the grid tonight. So yeah, some great battles, some great driving, and I'm sure we are going to see some extraordinary battles, as I believe it is still raining on the server. So it is going to be a very interesting race this evening, and it is going to be a race of attrition, because we saw in qualifying there how much it can affect your lap times if you're just putting 2 wheels onto the grass. And when you can imagine these cars all going round now in anger, 2, 3 and 4 cars wide in some of the corners, I'm sure there is going to be some wheels on the grass and some time to be lost, and some drivers with time to make up once they settle into this race.
Well, if you thought it was difficult enough trying to set a quick time on one lap on your own out there on a soaking wet Brands Hatch, now try and find yourself safe for an hour's racing with 30 odd other cars around you kicking up the spray. So to run quickly through the order, it's Sem Spenkelink takes a pretty strong pole position here for the first round of season 2 of the SRHI, that's Sim Racing Hub International's GT4 Championship. He'll be joined on the front row by Tim Kroll in the 933 Porsche 718 Cayman. Danny de Swart heads up the second row in the 57 Mercedes with Michael Hutman. Then behind them, Alexander Delors in the number 6 Porsche with Daniel Hoekstra in the 66 Aston Martin on the third row. Then on the fourth row, Andre Brendel in the 331 Camaro, Nicolas Malott in the number 5 Porsche, then Arjen Lermans in 9th place in the 46 Camaro, with Patrick Tractor rounding out the top 10 in the 313 Ginetta. Then, as we just we'll go through to the top 15. Mark Dieters in the 77 Aston Martin, Yannick Valenduk in the 301 BMW in 12th position, Evan Vass in the 74 Aston Martin, Jan Paul Eklenboom in the number 31 Mercedes, and it's Manuel Willems in the 195 Porsche, rounding out your top 15. And unfortunately for Alexander Witt in the 78 Maserati, if it was difficult already in qualifying, Steve, he's going to have a tough time from 22nd on the grid and in these horrendous conditions which have carried over to the race.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all credit to him for getting that Maserati up to 22nd on the grid. I mean, there's no easy drivers in this field. It's a grid full of quality, as ever at SRHI. You get some fantastic racing with the guys, and if you get a chance, you need to check out the GT3 Championship that's just started last Tuesday with the first round at the Nürburgring, and it is live again Tuesday the 16th, and they will be racing at Misano, so tune in for that one. Absolutely cracking racing in the GT3 race at Nürburgring last Tuesday, and if you haven't watched it yet, you need to jump on SRHI YouTube channel and watch that video. Make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you get notified of all these live races that are coming your way throughout the coming months. There is a fantastic schedule lined up for you, but to get things underway this evening with the GT4s at wet Brands Hatch, this is going to be an absolute cracker. This is going to be a race of attrition. This is going to be concentration max, because these guys are not going to get a minute's peace round here. Even when they're running in clear air, they are going to have to be so careful not to push too hard, keeping the track limits, not run too wide. So let's not forget, we've got the track cuts as well. You get 3 warnings, and if you cut the track on the 4th occasion, you will get an automatic drive-through penalty, which pretty much drive-throughs can pretty much wreck your race. That's you're talking about a good sort of 30 seconds or so to drive through the pit lane. That can destroy any hopes of a good finish. So the guys are going to have to be very careful, and I think there'll be a few energy drinks required at the end of the race just to pick themselves up again from the concentration levels that are going to be going on tonight, Tim.
Yeah, and I'm sure we might need a hot cup of tea and a lie down after this, I'm sure. So with 60 minutes on the clock, it's a 1 hour race. Drivers will be required to make 1 pit stop for fuel and tyres, which, as we discussed earlier, we could see some people maybe dive for pit lane early on to get that clear air, especially with the spray, such an impediment on vision when it's so wet here at Brands Hatch. Lots of people in the chat on our YouTube channel, so we can see you guys, so keep dropping your comments as to how you think the race is going, any picks for victory, and who you've got your eye on, who you're cheering on. But as the grid forms up then for this first race of season 2, round 1 for the SRHI GT4 Championship, Sem Spenkelink will lead them to the green flag if he can see it through the absolutely torrential rain here at Brands Hatch. A fantastic aerial shot of enabling us to see this first 4 or 5 rows where the action will certainly not be limited to, as it looks like Sem is just taking his time, bringing the grid towards the start finish line, and actually it looks like Kroll's a little bit further ahead than him, and we go green, and Kroll really was almost ahead of Spenkelink across the line, so I'm pretty sure they'll be looking at that. There might be some sort of steward's inquiry as to Kroll being quite far ahead of Sem as they head up towards Druids for the first time. Everyone seemed to keeping things clean so far, but it's Kroll really who might have semi-jumped the gun on Spenkelink and has found himself out in front. It did look like a very slow run to the line, so he may have just been slightly impatient. But here we go, onto the back straight, the Cooper straight into Surtees. Everyone seems to have filed down into a line pretty easily. There seems to be no one off in the gravel, no one spinning off into the grass, as we can see so far. But Kroll doing his best to gap Spenkelink, probably his main challenge, and with a pit stop required in this race, he might be running slightly different fuel or slightly different strategy to enable him to push on. It might be his game plan is to get in front now and really set some almost qualifying laps to gap the field. But De Swart in third, heads up Hutman, Delors, Brendel, Lermans, Hoekstra, Milot and Track to round out your top 10. So the order's pretty much as it was when we went green, but an interesting start there, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely, and don't count anything out at the moment, because it will take these guys a couple of laps to get things settled down, get what temperature they can into the brakes and the tyres, and get things as optimum as they can be in these conditions, because this is torrential again. As we can see, the rain is really coming down now, and I don't think anything's going to get any easier for these guys anytime soon. But we can see Sem, he just needs to keep ahead of that Mercedes, settle into a rhythm, and with the pace he had in qualifying, I don't think it's going to be long before he's challenging Tim Kroll for that P1 back. And as we can see now, as they come into Druids, he has in fact actually just got that little bit closer up behind Tim, and he's closed the gap down somewhat, and he's looking like he's potentially going to start putting him under pressure very soon.
Well, like we say, it might have been Kroll's game plan. It might have been that he really needs to get in front of Spenkelink too, although this race is an hour long, to really put his race in the best position possible. But Kroll from Spenkelink, from De Swart, and then it is Hutman fourth, and it is Alexander Delors rounds out the top 5 as we cut back to Lee Mosley here in the 75 Aston Martin, looking pretty strong in 16th. We're going to start seeing this mid-pack heat up for sure as we're side by side down the back straight here. Hoekstra, and there's an Aston Martin there off onto the grass. That's Nafas is running 2 wheels onto the green stuff. Probably not the best place to put your Aston Martin on one of the fastest parts of the track, but I'm sure he'll be looking for a way past soon as Hoekstra gets 2 wheels out onto the grass there on the run into Westfield. Actually, he's gone off. He's in the gravel, and that's going to lose him 2, 3, 4 positions on the run through the Sheen curve. As we cut back to Kroll at the top of the order, he's really being challenged now by Spenkelink on the run into Clark. He goes to the inside, having to defend. Spenkelink's going to be looking for that cut back, that run onto the Brabham straight here. It's not really much of a straight. You find yourself, you're turning the entirety of the way up towards Paddock Hill Bend, but Spenkelink certainly looming large in the mirrors of Kroll for this lead with 56.5 minutes to go. There's plenty of time to get this move done, but I don't doubt that Sem will want to get that lead back as soon as possible.
Yeah, Sem will want to get in control of this race. As we saw, Tim Kroll seem to take a dislike to the markers into Paddock Hill Bend and wipe those out of the way, just taking as much curb as he could, which is very brave, as we've said before, in these conditions. But yeah, Sem will want to get past. He'll want to get in control of this race. It is looking like he's going to potentially have the pace on the Porsche. Whether he can get past as easy as he would like to is a different matter, because it's okay being faster than the guy in front, but it's a different ball game trying to actually get past him, and in these conditions to get past cleanly as well is going to be very difficult. We just see the Porsche having the run out of Surtees there and up through Pilgrim's Drop, and just gaps them a little bit, although we're only talking fractions of a second. Any breathing space will be greatly appreciated by Tim, as he's very slow through there, and Sem's looking like he's going to potentially, he's hustling Tim now, and he's really putting him under pressure, and he's just letting him know he's there. And look at that, he's carrying so much more speed through Sheens there. He was all over the back of the Porsche, and that is also allowing De Swart to catch up, who currently, worth mentioning, is in third place overall, is the top amateur.
Yes, on your timing screen, for those watching the stream, on the left-hand side on the timing tower, those numbers that are in a red box, those are your amateur drivers. The whites are in the pros class, so there are class honours up for grabs here, as Sem really did look like he got a good run out of Clark Curve. The Porsche 718 Cayman looking like it's got just enough of grunt in a straight line to keep that KCM crossbow behind, but Spenkelink may be holding the pace advantage out onto the Grand Prix loop, and he might have to start thinking where's best to make a challenge as he looks towards the inside on the run down the hill into Graham Hill Bend. That's such a tricky corner in the wet. The water seems to pool up and the track surface is completely underwater as Spenkelink looks to the inside into Surtees. He's running up onto the curb slightly. Kroll round the outside, a little bit of side to side contact which is allowing De Swart into the mix as well. Spenkelink's managed to get the job done as Kroll tucks into the slipstream on the run down Dingle Dell. There's 3 for the lead now as De Swart trying to find a way, actually just makes the best decision I think in that situation and backs out of it, see if these two come to blows. But Spenkelink now back into the lead, Kroll second, De Swart third, then there's a gap of a second back to Hutman, over 2 seconds then back to Delort in fifth. So although it's close at the top, there's certainly some gaps starting to emerge towards the end of the field, and actually Kroll runs wide there onto the grass on the exit of Sheen, which has allowed De Swart into the mix. He's going around the outside into Sterling's and he gets the job done, and I suppose that's sometimes the gift these wet conditions add, is you can make alternative lines work.
Yeah, absolutely, and we saw on the previous lap that Sem was so much faster through that section of the track than Kroll, and I think it was a case of there Tim was trying to keep up with him and trying to push that Porsche maybe a little bit too hard, and we saw him run wide, and that's let De Swart through into second place, and he's also coming under pressure from P4 now with the battles are really hotting up now, and Hutman he's all over the back of Kroll. Whether he can maintain it, whether Kroll will just regroup now and get back into that groove, put some pressure on and try and catch up to De Swart again. But I think we're going to see Spenkelink now probably check out, and he will create a gap. I think he's already got 1.3 seconds up the road, so he's just going to do what he needs to do and create a bit of a cushion, and then he can probably drive with a little bit of caution rather than just flat out hot lapping.
It was almost Hutman's best opportunity there when Kroll was slightly rattled from all that battling, maybe to try and put a move on, but with 52.5 minutes to go, Steve, sometimes it's the best decision is just to back out and maybe think that another opportunity will present itself to you. But Spenkelink was definitely not wasting his chance to take the lead back as we cut to Manuel Willens in the 195 Aston Martin. Actually no, this is the Porsche who's been passed, so a bit of drama between those two into Surtees, and he was flashing the lights. He was potentially not too happy with that move, so I'm sure we'll see if anything comes of that. He might be able to make some sort of payback, as these GT4 cars sometimes do get a little bit too close for comfort, as Arjen van der Linden in the 61 Aston Martin certainly hanging the rear out of that vantage through Hawthorns. He's in close company behind Patrick Tractor, who started in 10th, has actually dropped down slightly. We didn't catch what happened to him, but he was inside the top 10 at the start. He's now in 17th in the 313 Ginetta, but plenty of time still to make those positions back up.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's a case of just not getting too hot-headed, if I can get my words out, and not too flustered either. You know, you've just got to try and remain calm, remain positive. If you're going to lose a position or two, now's the best time to do it, because you, like you say, you've got 51 minutes left to recover from those mistakes. There's also the potential, obviously, of pit stops. You've got to get those pit stops right. You know, time can be lost and won in pit stops by just hitting your pit box at the right spot exactly. As we're seeing now that Tractor is really trying to make that move for 16th place. He's really putting the Aston under pressure, and he's just dropped away a little bit as they've exited Druids. The Aston got a better run out of there, but the little Ginetta is so much better through the twisty stuff, and it's pretty much its home track, I believe, isn't it, Tim Brands Hatch, for the Ginetta?
Ginetta around the corner, aren't they? They do love bringing those cars here. If anyone's been for a British Touring Car event, you would have seen a swarm of these little things sending it round the iconic ex-Grand Prix circuit. So fantastic to see a Ginetta fighting up the order. Tractor actually the highest placed Ginetta in the standings so far, so that'll be a mini class honours, I suppose. As actually in front, the Aston Martin did run wide and Tractor's got through, so one of those positions reclaimed, and I'm sure we'll see him doing his best to climb back up the order. Daniel Herkstra here, another name that was towards the front of the grid when the green flag was waved, now back in 18th place in the 66 Aston Martin. So you can see actually on the front of that car some of the pink and purple paint was missing. As we see De Swart heads to pit lane. He was running in the top 3. He's now head to the pit, so he's decided to go early, maybe find himself some clean air 10 minutes into this one. Although I suppose actually the risk is here, Steve, that everyone seems pretty bunched up. You might find yourself in traffic, and early on that's not what you need.
Absolutely not. No, it's like I said, in the build-up show, definitely if you have an incident and you're going to be towards the back of the pack, then yeah, it's worth maybe taking that early pit stop. But from where De Swart was, I'd question that decision, maybe incorrectly. I've been wrong many times, and people will point that out. But running in the top 10, I definitely wouldn't really have considered doing a pit stop this early, because he is going to come back out into traffic. There is no doubt about that. And Brands Hatch is a difficult track to overtake at under any circumstances, let alone torrential rain like this. So he's going to have his work cut out when he comes back out to really make the undercut work, unless he's had some contact that we didn't see and he's got back to the pits for some damage repair or anything like that. But as for doing the undercut this early in the race from within the top 10, I would say that it's probably not going to work, as we see Sam Spenkling there just lighting the backup of that KTM a little bit as he exited through that curve there, and he was just a little bit maybe aggressive with the loud pedal, but he's certainly got that gap up a little bit. He's got some breathing room. He can really make that KTM do what he wants it to do now and drive within the limits, and it's up to Tim Krul to try and push and close the gap. It's Tim Krul really that's the man under pressure to try and hang on to the back of Sem now, and it's not going to be easy to close that gap. We saw that there was 9/10 a lap pace difference between Spenkling and Krul in qualifying, so he's definitely got his work cut out as Tim.
Yeah, Spenkling with that pace in the bag. I suppose the real question is, De Swart was in amongst people that he was, a similar pace, matching these guys pretty consistently in terms of lap time. So really, it's quite a strange decision to pit when you find yourself then amongst slower cars. It's hard enough as it is coming out in traffic where you're pretty evenly matched, but now he's going to be with cars that he's going to have to try and find a way past if he really wants to make this strategy work. But with over 47 minutes to go, I'm sure we'll see these individual game plans start to play out. Daniel Hoekstra, his game plan is certainly retake these positions that he lost at the start, and the contact with the Ginetta, and Hoekstra off to screen left there on the way into Surtees, and all that work undone once again. That's very disappointing for him. And here we go, Danny De Swart, 25th position, so a long way down. I suppose the real number we need to look at is the gap to Spenkling, who's in first, but it's nearly a minute, Steve. And is that time really that you can make up on an in lap and out lap and a pit stop?
Definitely he's up against it, because he's only got 5 seconds to gap between him and 24th place, which obviously that's going to affect whether he's going to make it work or not, because he's got to push past those guys as quickly as possible. I know it sounds obvious, but that's just what he's got to do to make it work. Otherwise he could end up finding himself losing out to the other guys, because let's face it, they're all running pretty much a few seconds apart up front. If they all pit pretty much at the same time, as we've just seen Tafas, I think it is, they're making a little bit of a mistake and losing position. Just very easy to do in these conditions. But yeah, if the other guys all stick to pretty much a game plan of maybe at 30 minutes, just splitting the race in half and doing a pit stop, and they all do the same strategy, they're not going to run across the traffic. So yeah, like I said before, I question that strategy. I would love for him, and I hope he does prove me wrong, but at this moment in time it is not something I would have done myself, to be honest.
Well, and it's not just traffic, Steve, to really compound your point. These guys are going wheel to wheel, so it's not just picking off one car at a time, as we saw Natafas and Van Vingen going side to side at the third sector of the lap here at Brands Hatch. So it's more difficult than he's really set himself a challenge, has De Swart. But here we go, Alexander Delors in the number 6 Porsche 718 Cayman is really in this battle pack. He's going to be looking forward to see if he can challenge for this podium. It's Hutman in front and they've now really dropped off from Spenkelink, who really is the man on a move at the moment. A purple lap time of 36.9. He's getting close to the times he was doing in qualifying. 2.5 second gap opening up to Kroll. I mean, that's fantastic pace from the man at the top of the pile at the moment.
Absolutely fantastic driving, from Sam. He's just putting those laps in. He's been very consistent with it. He's he's pushing the car. He's like you say, he's putting in some very quick lap times. But when we were watching him earlier, everything just looks so under control, so smooth. He just looks like he's got the race in the bag. I would go as far to say that even 44 minutes to go, it's his race to lose as long as he can get his pit stop right. I say, hit that limiter when you enter the pits at the right time, hit your pit box exactly right, and get out of the pits as quick as you can, in lap, out lap. I'm sure he'll nail them, but it's at this moment in time, with the pace he's got and the gap he's got out front at the moment, it's his race to lose. I think everybody else behind him, especially Tim, obviously, is working very hard just to try and keep up with him, let alone close the gap down.
Well, Spenkelink does have that pace advantage that we've seen in qualifying. I suppose he's going to be dictating the tone of this race, and others are going to have to be proactive in their strategy. Actually, we see contact there between Hoekstra and the Porsche, and it almost looked like, I think that's Vale in front in the 718 Porsche, which nearly went round. That's allowed Denise Pope to make a rather optimistic position gain there on the run down through into Hawthorns. Can she make up another position? It's close, they're side by side. Denise just managing to get up the inside. What a really good move. She really had to put the car in a position to make the pass, and she did. So that's fantastic driving from Pope in the 79 Ginetta. Actually, Hoekstra's managed to get a good run out of Westfield and has closed the gap side by side up the hill into Sheen Curve, and they're giving each other plenty of room, but almost too much room, and Pope wide, and all that work undone. And that's exactly the kind of thing these conditions can do. But optimistic, these three really can't decide who wants to lead the pack. They're swapping positions at almost every corner. It's now Vale who leads from that's Hoekstra in the pink and purple Aston Martin, and Pope behind. And I think Pope, well, she was looking towards the pit lane but decides to stay out another lap. And this is the kind of situation you find yourself in with these conditions, Steve, where you're at one point you're attacking, one point you're defending, and at one point you're unfortunately slipping towards the end of the white lines and going off the circuit.
Yeah, Denise just showing us exactly what you need to do in those circumstances. As we just seen, very deep and optimistic into Druids there, and just running wide. And is Denise going to manage to get one of those positions back? She is indeed. But yeah, as I was going to say, she was one moment she managed to gain two positions from other people's mistakes. Then unfortunately she ran wide. She put it on the grass, but instead of panicking and letting her head down, she managed to keep it all reasonably tidy, rejoined, and almost immediately at the next corner she was attacking the guys again. So that's what you've got to do. You've got to keep positive, just stay under control as much as possible. Don't get hot-headed, easy for you to say. Keep calm and just make those moves count, and just try and pick them off one at a time. But great driving from all three drivers there. There was a few run wides, but no serious contact, and some good overtakes.
Nice to see them all still on their merry way as we cut back to Delors here, and there's a Mercedes off to the right hand side. They'll have to be careful on the run down into Graham Hill Bend not to collect the stationary car, but Spenkelink at the top of the order then opening up a gap at 6.5 seconds back to Kroll, as we see the Camaro having a look. That's Brendel having a look up the inside of Delors for fourth. And this battle really for the final step on the rostrum is going to heat up, I'm sure, over the rest of this race. 40 minutes to go, best part of 41 minutes still to go, as Spenkelink really starting to open that gap at the top. Further down the order in 11th place, that's Lee Mosley in the 75 Aston Martin, who's currently the highest placed AM driver, so he's leading the amateur class this evening so far. Here he is on screen, the front of that Aston Martin Vantage GT4 looking slightly worse for wear, but he's now finding himself in some clear air, good time to get his head down, maybe get some good laps under his belt and start opening up gaps around him, which he seems to be in a little bit of no man's land at the moment, which is sometimes a difficult position to find yourself, Steve, especially in these conditions. It's sometimes almost quite comforting to have some cars to refer to out on track.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's easy when you're in clear air, as it were, running around on your own. You sort of try and get into a rhythm, try to put those laps together, but it is easy sometimes just to lose a little bit of concentration, get distracted slightly. Your mind can wander, you lose that little bit of concentration, and before you know it, you've lost half a second a lap, and the guy behind you's reeling you in, or the gap you were closing down at the front has all of a sudden got so much bigger, and the mistakes creep in. So personally, I do prefer to be running close with someone. I like a good battle, and I think it's as long as you're battling sensibly so that you're not slowing each other down too much. If you're running close with somebody, it's sometimes it's the best thing. But one thing we haven't mentioned this evening, and in these conditions, we've seen so many times, the Porsche with the engine configuration, it is so quick out of the corners. We've just seen a Ginetta there that's been off the track, and he's still off the track, allowing the guys to go past. He's obviously being lapped at this moment in time, so he's just staying out of the way. But yeah, the engine configuration just allows that Porsche to really squat down. Even in these conditions, it's got the weight over the rear wheels, and it can really drive out those corners, and I think that's saved a few of the Porsche drivers in some very, very close calls, shall we say, of being overtaken going into corners. You suddenly find the Porsches just squirting out of the corners and just gaining a few vital yards on the other cars.
Yeah, and drivers will be playing around with the traction control and ABS abilities of these cars to do their best. As we see a battle at the front, that's Brendel looking to the outside of Delors for fourth position on the road as they're going side by side up towards the start-finish line. It looks like Brendel's going to have the inside on the run into Paddock Hill Bend. Can he get the car stopped? He can. That hefty Camaro looking more like a Air Force carrier, really, out on the seas here at Brands Hatch in these conditions. But Brendel having to close the door there behind. Delors looked to the inside on the run into Druids, but he's able just to close the door, keep that Camaro in front, and now we've got to see if he can push on and push up the order. And as I look on my timing screens, well, I've been waiting to see if Desport appears at the bottom, but he hasn't done yet. But I have noticed that the first caller into the pit lane, the number 57 Mercedes, who was running in the podium positions, is now up to 19th, so he is starting to make his way up the order. I've got the drivers tagged on my timing screen, and if you were at the track at Brands Hatch and you were stood on the outside of Druids, you would probably just about be able to see the leading KTM dart past on the run down through to Pilgrim's Drop as Desport passes on the inside at Druids. But I think these guys, really, this is a gap that's probably going to continue to extend. It's now up over a minute and 12 seconds, so Sem Spenkelink at the top of the order is lapping at a fantastic pace, 37.9 compared to Desport, who's down 19th position doing 38.7s, and in between those two there's 18 drivers, all of which doing any kind of time between the low 38s to the high 41s. So the challenge is still as big as ever for Desport, but actually now we see Spenkelink catching the back of traffic. Is this a time you might consider boxing that 6 minutes early before your dream strategy, Steve, of making the race into two equal halves?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's going to be catching these cars pretty quickly. We know that he's got the pace, and when you catch in the back end of the field, there is a big pace difference anyway. So he may take this lap just to see how compliant the back markers will be, and if they get out of the way without too much objection, then he may stay out for a couple more laps. But certainly, if you're finding it difficult, if you're finding the traffic awkward to get past, there is no harm, no foul in pitting this early into the race. He will come back out into traffic, but I think he's got such a reasonable lead now, and he's got such good pace that I don't think Sem's really got anything to worry about. I don't think he's going to lose the lead of the race by pitting early. As we just see him there, he's managed to clear two back markers in pretty much three corners there, so he's not lost too much time this lap. It won't be his fastest lap, but he hasn't lost too much time. So I think I'm going to call it. We may see him staying out a bit longer.
Spankelink then rather happier, I can imagine, smiling with some rather compliant traffic. Obviously the back markers will be getting blue flagged. They will be notified that there's a driver closing in on them who is at the sharp end of things, as we hear Arjen Lermans in the 46 Camaro in 6th place. So we're starting to see these Camaros move forwards through the field, and it is behind there, I think that's Delors who's dropped back, but I'm willing to be proven wrong. There's Malott in 7th place in the number 5. This a small little battle pack here for these positions just outside the podium order is really going to, I suppose, going to be decided in these the pit stops that these drivers will have to complete before race end. But even if you do roll the dice or make the strategy work, you could find yourself losing all that time you've gained. If you make a mistake on these treacherous conditions here at Brands Hatch. So although you might win some positions with a clever pit strategy, you're going to have to still keep your wits about you, with the weather not looking like it's going to relent at all with 34 minutes remaining.
No, absolutely not, and this is a mistake waiting to happen almost as they're side by side there, but all good, and everybody through safely through I think it was Hawthorne, was it Tim? Or?
Yeah, it was. That was actually Delors getting through traffic, so it looked like he was getting past some blue flag drivers who then decided to take the opportunity to have a little battle themselves. So it's not as easy as just taking the one lane and the guys sticking to one side. There is an opportunity for people to take advantage, I suppose, of those blue flag moments. But really, it's going to be tough to really jump all the way up the order. I'm willing to be proven wrong, as we both have said so far this evening. That it's going to be tough, really, to start closing up some of these gaps. You see in the top 10, there's maybe a few positions still to really be sorted out in terms of 7/10 a second or so, but when a gap starts to open to 10 or so seconds, you're almost relying on an incident which could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. We've just seen Natafas now. I think he's pestering Anderson. He's got past Anderson, in fact, to get up into 18th place at the moment. So good drive from Natafas, who's been battling pretty much all the way through the race. But yeah, we've just seen cars coming up against. I'm not sure that's not a back marker, is it? That's a race for position. It's
position, yeah, that is Vale in the 718 Cayman there. So De Sport finding himself in this traffic that we were discussing earlier. He goes to the outside at Clark Curve. That's another position gain. So now he's up into 16th is De Sport, the first of our pit stoppers from the top order. There's a white flag out for a slower car, but I think that looks like it's been cleared, as Brendel now has made the move, or he's in 5th place at the moment, running pretty competitively, looking strong. He's being hassled by a fellow Camaro behind of Lermans. These two have been joined together for the last few laps, and I suppose in a position like this, if you're in a train, you might decide to dive to the pit lane, as we've seen our race leader actually dives to the pit lane just as I say that. Sem Spankelink into the box. Let's see where he emerges. This is going to be crucial for the race as the Camaros come together at Clark Curve. That pushes Brendel wide onto the gravel. He managed to get it slowed down and back onto the track. I think actually behind, the Porsches hit pit lane. What a wise decision. You don't want to get involved. Wow, that fantastic driving from the white Camaro there of Lermans, letting Brendel back through. I suppose that's some nice fair sportsmanship between the two. But the question is, where will Spankelink emerge onto the track? It looks like he is just about to come back out, feed into Paddock Hill. Here he is, the KTM trundling down pit lane, a soaking wet pit lane here at Brands Hatch, as he makes his way through this little chicane here. It's nothing too difficult when you're on the pit lane speed limiter. He's got to feed back into traffic. There's the Maserati on the outside, but he's got the inside line. The Maserati aware that the race leader, or former race leader, is now leaving pit lane, and Spankelink looks to have played a very solid card there with a gap of multiple seconds actually in front of him, so he's into a nice little pocket of clear air amongst the traffic. Alexander Witter, well, he's doing a fantastic job to be up into 11th in the Maserati, a car we know doesn't have any traction control, it doesn't have any ABS, So these are the worst conditions. They're probably one of the most difficult tracks to drive in the wet, Steve, but he's doing a really good job so far.
Yeah, look at that steering wheel seesaw, left, right, and all to keep it in a straight line pretty much. But doing a cracking job and up to 11th at the moment. Obviously, he has got to pit, but so have a lot of the guys in front, so that's not a bad position to be in. I mean, just judging by the guys that have pitted, he's potentially, I think that's a P13 at the moment, looking at the leaderboard and the relative pit stops. We see him fighting the wheel. He's going to need a lie down after this race. He's constant. I mean, the concentration levels in that car must be absolutely through the roof. But doing an absolutely fantastic job to be up there. I think he's potentially gained, what was he, 22nd in qualifying, I think, Tim?
Indeed, yeah, he was definitely towards the bottom of the order, so to have made his way up half the grid already is fantastic stuff. We see Brendel in pit lane from 5th place.
He's off.
Gone off. The first mistake there. He's been driving really well so far as we just tick over halfway actually, so I'll give a quick run through the order. Tim Kroll leads the way with a 7-second gap to Michael Huttman, 2nd place in the 84 Camaro, then it's Alexander Delors in the 6 Porsche, a further 3 seconds back. Arjen Lermans in the 46 Camaro, and then Dennis Berkman in the number 4 Cayman rounds out your top 5. Yannick Valenduk in the 301 BMW in 6th place, and then it's Jan-Paul Eikelenboom in the 31 Mercedes, 32 seconds off the leader. Patrick Tractor in 8th place in the 313 Ginetta. Head Sem Spenkelink, who's up to 9th place, so that pit decision really looks to have worked in his favour. He holds a nice 3-second gap over Luke Pound, who rounds out the top 10. And looking at the timing screen, the gap between Spenkelink and De Swart, who was the first man to hit pit lane, is now really 20 seconds. So that hasn't paid off for De Swart so far. As we see the top 2, there's Huttman and Delors hit pit lane. So these guys have made it to that halfway point and deciding that now is the time to hit the box and make their strategy work. But interesting to see, Steve, that gap has really extended between De Swart and Spenkelink. We knew that Sem in the 76 KTM had the pace advantage, but 20 seconds in excess of that just through that pit strategy is a lot of time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I said, the pit strategy is so important. Just depending where you come out in traffic, and when we sort of called it for De Swart, saying that we thought it was too early. We may be making a poor judgment. He may have had a reason to do that, but maybe just thinking, you know what, these guys are battling. It's a bit tight up here. I'm going to stay out of the way and pit early and see if it works. But unfortunately, I don't think it has worked for him. But like you say, for Sem, he's worked hard with his laps. He's got that gap up there initially. He was, pitted when he did, maybe a lap earlier than the other guys, and they've literally, some of those guys that were running with him at the front have responded to what he's done, and it's really looking like he's going to be the big winner from the pit stops. And I think when everything shakes out, he will be the man still at the front of the pack, because we know that he's quick, and we know that he will potentially dispose of any obstacles on track very cleanly, but very decisively, more importantly, without costing himself too much time. The KTM is a fantastic car. It's light, it's nimble. It's you have to really hustle the KTM to get the lap times out of it in the dry, but I think in the wet conditions, the fact that it is so nimble is really probably helping Spenkelink do. It's complementing him doing a great job of putting a great race together and driving very, very well.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're about to see him take another position, too, actually, as Kroll and Berkman hit pit lane. Patrick Tractor as well joining the 2 Porsches in the box to make their one mandatory stop. But Spenkelink, here we go, up to 4th place. And interested behind, where's Kroll going to rejoin? We've actually seen De Swart get involved with Huttman Delors. He's actually interrupted that battle. So maybe this pit strategy is starting to pay off. There is a 7/10 gap to the car in front, but as the order will shuffle around on the left hand side of the screen as these guys complete their pit stops. But just over halfway is in front Huttman running through the gravel. That's not ideal. He'll have to deal with dirty tyres on the run into Druids, which has seen him run slightly wide. De Swart to the inside in the 57 Mercedes as they run down the hill out of Druids into Graham Hill Bend. Hutman able to hold that inside line and defend the position, but De Swart, a man on a mission from well down the order after his early pit stop 10 minutes into the race, is looking for a way past the Camaro in front as they run into Surtees now, bumper to bumper. De Swart unable to get the move done into there, but if he can tuck into the slipstream on the run down the hill through Pilgrim's Drop, then under the bridge towards Hawthorns, it's a very tricky corner to get a position gained, but Hutman able to hold the inside line through the right-hander, and looks like he's just going to hold on to the position for now. But really, De Swart is looking like he's in a fight for the podium positions, which we wouldn't have said when he had first pitted. Just running wide though, two wheels onto the grass on the left-hand side there.
No, absolutely not. We didn't think he was, but I think it still cost him time. I mean, Kroll is some way up the road, and it has to be said, when De Swart pitted, he was relatively had him in sight, whereas now he's literally, we saw De Swart dropping into Paddock Hill and Kroll was round Druids Bend and away. So I think that gap has increased and it has cost De Swart time. But overall, he is going to be potentially battling for a podium position, and at the end of the day, regardless of what strategy you've done, it's the result that matters. It's where you are, and if you can get on the podium in the first round of the championship as the top amateur as well as the overall podium, then that is an awesome drive from De Swart tonight. If he can do it, he's got 24 minutes left to prove his worth, as it were, and bring that Mercedes home as high as he can. And he's really hustling Hutman in front now, and he's trying to get that what is P4 off him. He's really pushing, and he's pushing so hard that he is making one or two mistakes. He just needs to be careful. He needs to keep things controlled and just keep the pressure on Hutman and put the pressure on him. Let him make the mistakes, and the opportunity will present itself. Don't try to hustle too hard that you're the one making the mistakes.
Well, at the top of the order at the moment, it's Jan Vadding Duck in the 301 BMW leads the way, but he is still due to make a pit stop with 23.5 minutes remaining. And just as I say that, he hits pit lane. So your leader, as I'm sure, will retake the lead as he crosses the start-finish line. Sem Spenkelink holds a near 10-second advantage over Krull in the 933 Porsche. Hutman, a further 12 seconds back, is really what's going to be our net podium position, third place in the 84 Camaro, and he's joined obviously in close company, as we've mentioned, with the Camaro behind. But here's Denise Pope, who is letting the leader through, but a consistent run from her so far. Looks like she might have got herself out of that battle that was maybe paying threat to her race. We saw her swapping positions with Hoekstra in the pink and purple Aston Martin, but Kroll here taking second place as the leader for 1 or 2 laps. Valenduk hit pit lane, but a 10 or 12, well really best part of 11 second gap to Spenkelink. You're going to be relying on the man who's in form making a mistake, which is certainly not something you'd want to count on with 22 minutes to go. And I'm sure De Swart, although he's got that red badge to say he's leading the amateur category, he's certainly extending beyond the realms of that classification now, battling for what is third place on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these conditions are a good leveller, but if anything, these conditions take a lot more skill and a lot more concentration to extract every ounce of time out of the track and the car, and just to keep the consistency, because, in any race, it's all about consistency, and 60 minutes of these conditions, it does take a lot to be this consistent. But when these two are battling as close as they are as well, that just throws can throw caution to the wind, as we've seen both cars squirming under the power. They're really sort of trying to force the limits, trying to find as much grip as they can. They're hitting the loud pedal very hard on some of the exits. In particular, we've seen the Mercedes light the back tyres up and get a little bit crossed up, as we see again De Swart using every ounce of the track, and probably a little bit more than he should be in these conditions, getting away with it, but he's dropping off the back of the Camaro in front ever so slightly, and it looks like he's maybe just losing touch with him. And I do think that's potentially because he's slightly overdriving the Merc. He just needs to try and tag onto the back and just stay large in those mirrors, and that position will present itself if he can just keep the pressure on the Camaro in front and just really make him work for the position and just play the waiting game. Swart has all the cards, he's there behind, he can just really, flash the headlights, stay large in the mirror, just really put the pressure on the car in front, as we see him closing right up in the braking zone now, and that's exactly what he's done. He's pushed him wide without the contact. Obviously just mental pressure has forced the Camaro to run deep there, run wide. He's got the inside line now up through Surtees, and he's going to get the power down and keep it in a straight line. The Camaro's going to try and come back at him. It's dropping into the slipstream, but it looks like that Mercedes got the job done.
Well, it's certainly had to wait his time. De Swart, who pitted only 10 minutes into this hour-long race this evening at Brands Hatch, and he came out of the pit lane well down the order outside the top 20. Now finds himself taking third position on the road from Hutman in the 84 Camaro. So a really strong drive from his. We see Kessels further down the order has actually just got a time penalty, so not quite sure what that would be for. So already in 24th place. That's really going to damage his race going forward. So we cut to Oliver Anderson, the 101 Ginetta, in 17th position, who's quite. Well, you can see Denise Pope, the next position. Oh, and he's just had a bit of a slide on the exit of Clark Curve. That was really difficult stuff. Sometimes you just can't save those in these horrible conditions at Brands Hatch. That's an unfortunate one for Anderson there.
Yeah, absolutely. He was trying very hard, and obviously just got things. We've just seen a BMW off in the background there as well. Very, very difficult conditions, and just lit the back tyres up coming out of Clark Curve there, and he was just balancing the throttle as he was losing grip and trying to keep them forward momentum, and the Ginetta cried no more and just lost the back end, and he made contact with the wall, so hopefully not too much damage if any, and he can carry on fighting and trying to claw his way back up the field a little bit. Seen some good battles throughout the field tonight, some really good racing, and I've said it before, say it again, say it many times in the future, these conditions are not easy to drive in, let alone race as close as these guys have. We had a very similar race at the Nürburgring last week with the GT3, same conditions, some very, very good driving. If you do want to get involved with these guys, SRHI, you need to look them up and join them on Discord, because it's a great community to be part of, and as you can see tonight from the stream and some of the past streams, there is some great racing to be had, so yeah, definitely a good community to get involved with.
A fantastic advert for GT4 racing, and definitely racing with the Sim Racing Hub International community. Some very fair and clean driving up and down the order, and like we say, Steve, got to pay testament to these drivers for making the best of some rather terrible conditions. It's not an easy opening round for your season if it's you turn up and it's torrential rain, and you want to do your best to finish as high up the order of 30 cars, 30 GT4 cars as well, as we see the Ginetta taking a big slide into Paddock Hill Bend Days. Needs to be careful, Anderson, when rejoining. The traffic will be coming through Paddock Hill blindly. He's almost on the racing line there, but manages to get going. Fortunately, enough of a gap in traffic, the drivers will be able to look at their relatives and see if there's time for them to spin back round. But a really good job, Aston Martin off in the background there, really good job from Oliver Anderson there to just make sure he was rejoining into clear air. But here we have the number 8 Ginetta Schenk further down the order, 24th, and I think just losing a position there to Valle Ingi. Actually no, that was being lapped there. So looking further up the grid, it's 13th place Luke Pound, who's an Aston Martin driver. We have mentioned a couple of times, and indeed in qualifying, is the highest placed driver still yet to pit. So he's leaving his strategy call rather late in the race. But we have seen that a late pit stop has worked. So Valenduk in the number 301 BMW in 10th, he pitted really only 4 or 5 minutes ago, or just with over 20 minutes. So a late stop from him has seen him keep inside the top 10, which is certainly a fantastic result for him to start the season. Delors here in 5th place in the number 6 Porsche, in close company. There's Malott 2 seconds back down the road. I think there's a lapped car between them, and here Delors going to catch up to Anderson, I believe, in front. The Ginetta we saw spinning off at the start of the previous lap. And as the camera cuts to Sem Spenkelink, I suppose the game for him now, Steve, is keep that head down as he have done so far, hit your marks and hope that the timer runs out a little bit quicker than it is at the moment.
Yeah, I'm going to say he'll be watching that clock. He'll be thinking, is there really 15 minutes left? Come on. But it's, I mean, for me, this first 45 minutes has gone really quickly. It's been a fantastic race tonight so far. 15 minutes, a lot of laps left, and a lot of action to be had still, especially as they are now fighting their way through a lot of back markers. And when we say back markers, they're lapping quite high up into the pack now. So he's the pace difference will be getting smaller and smaller, so the back markers will be that little bit harder to catch and could potentially be that bit harder to pass, although very compliant there and letting Sem through very, very easily and as it should be, to be fair. So on he goes, Sem, to complete another lap. This will be on to lap 27 and doing a fantastic job, and as you say, he'll cross the line, he'll look at his lap time and he'll look at the time remaining, and he will be wishing that time away now, I think. And yourself, Tim, you've raced in some wet GT4 races, I've raced in some wet GT4 races, and at the end there is, when you've had a good race in the wet, I think it overrides any feelings of a good race in the dry, because you know how hard you had to work for it.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things where it's a challenge enough as it is trying to be as quick as possible in one of these cars. You're really pushing for every extra inch, every pushing the line, pushing the margins as hard as you can, but to do it in the wet, it's definitely something else. And as the timer ticks over to 15 minutes remaining, we're closer now to 14 minutes, so under a quarter of this opening round of season 2 of the Sim Racing Hub International GT4 Championship. Quick run through the order. Sem Spenkelink leads rather comfortably at the top of the order, 11 seconds, or the best part of, to Tim Kroll in the 933 Porsche Cayman. Then over 20 seconds back, over 13 seconds back, we have Daniel de Swart, who made that early pit stop. He's now up into a podium position and doing his best to open the gap to Michael Hertman in the 84 Camaro, who currently lies in 4th place. Alexander Delors then in 5th, rounding out your top 5 in the number 6 Cayman, 37 seconds back from the leader. He has a 3-second gap to Nicolas Malott in the number 5 Porsche. Then in 7th place, Arjen Lermans in the 46 Camaro, 43 seconds from Spenkelink up top. Then Dennis Werkman in the number 4 Porsche, a further 5 seconds back from the car in front. Andre Breidel in the 33-1 Camaro is in 9th place, and it's Yannick Valenduk who rounds out the top 10 in the 301 BMW, but he has a 6-second gap to Brendel in front and a 10-second gap to Patrick Tractor behind in the 313 Ginetta, so looking like he's in a comfortable 10th place and a nice way to start your season with a top 10 tally starting to build next to your name. And we still have Luke Pound in 13th in the 166 Aston Martin and Alexandra Witte in the 78 Maserati, joined by Jan Vingen in the Aston Martin also, who's in 17th place. Those 3 drivers yet to pit with 12 minutes to go, so we could see them move around the order. I would expect to see them drop back, but with the rule stating you need to take tyres, we could see them on fresh rubber compared to drivers who are on slightly beaten up wet. So I mean, I'm impressed by the pace of de Swart, who's still managing to lap fairly competitively, considering his tyres are a good 40 minutes older than those around him, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. Just seen, I'm not sure, was that a Ginetta or off the track there, yeah, coming down Paddock Hill. Yeah, I mean, the tyre wear in these conditions, as it is so wet, the temps will be well under control. I'm not quite sure tyre wear will be an issue for him. I don't think it will, but I've yet to be stood corrected as ever. But he's doing a great job, whatever, because he's just had some traffic to battle through to get back to that 3rd place. I mean, his strategy meant that he had to fight some cars, and not only did he fight those cars, he's fought those cars clean. He's made the places up, and he's in a well-deserved 3rd place at the moment, and he's pretty much clear now in 3rd place. He's once he got the place off Hutman, he's now managed to gap him, and he's pretty much safe now, and he just needs to bring it home steady away without. I don't want to give him the commentator's curse. We've been talking about him an awful lot this evening, and he's done a fantastic job so far.
Well, a driver who we have been saying is doing the job is Sem Spenkelink, who leads the way, but now with a reduced margin, a final sector on that previous lap, some 7 or 8 seconds slower than the rest of the order, means that he lost a sizable chunk of time to the 933 Porsche of Tim Krol behind, a gap that was over 10 seconds, now under 5, so this race is still up for grabs. And like you were saying, Steve, Sem will be wishing that time away, but he needs to stay focused, because a mistake like that again in a final sector, or rather anywhere on this track, is going to cost him time and could cost him the race win.
Yeah, absolutely. He doesn't need to push for purple sectors. He just needs to try and remain consistent. Look at that gap. He's lapping faster than Krol anyway. So he just needs to really just watch the gap rather than the hot lap scenario of looking for purple sectors, and just bring it home nice and steady. Just maintain the gap. There's no real pressure on him. He's just got to drive the clean lines and make Tim Krol work for it. Tim Krol, could he close that gap up in 5 seconds? In 5 seconds in 9 minutes? Based on the pace so far, not a chance. So Sem just needs to really calm down, put the car where he needs it, and just drive steady, even if he's half a second off his lap times, because he's been lapping consistently faster than Krol for the whole of the evening anyway. So half a second off his fastest lap time's not going to be costing him much time to P2 at this moment.
Well, he had a very healthy 8 tenths to second place, a really sizable margin in qualifying. So Spenkelink, we know, has the pace advantage, and he has opened that gap up again by a handful of tenths to Tim Krol behind. It's now over 6 seconds. So it's exactly what he needs to do, Steve, is what you're saying. Just head down, just make sure you're lapping cleanly. You might find yourself, leaving half a car's width to the white line, just a little bit of space, a bit more margin to play with. And I think after making that first mistake, Spenkelink, I say first mistake, it's the first mistake we've seen from him this evening. He's been pretty much untouchable throughout qualifying and throughout the 52 minutes so far, but he might find himself leaving a bit more gap to the edge of the track just to make sure he brings that 76 KTM home in P1 as we cut back down the order to Zandorf Bale in the number 718 Cayman in 17th place. He's looking very strong here. It looks like he's found himself a nice little patch of clean air. He's got a gap of just about half a second to the car behind, and he's trying to see if he can close now what is a 6 second gap to the car in front, I believe. So yeah, an interesting first race to kickstart this season for sure. Spenkelink looking like he's going to take a win, but there's still time, Steve, to make another mistake, and if we've seen one, who's to know if we'll see another from Sem?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like we said, the only person at this moment in time putting any pressure on Spenkelink is himself, and he just needs to, like I say, keep that clear head, keep the concentration clear, and just bring it home now with 7 minutes to go. He will be breathing a sigh of relief. 7 minutes. He'll be calculating how many laps that is, and he'll do it. I mean, he's a seasoned racer. It's not going to be his. It's not his first party tonight. He's raced many times. We've raced against him, and we know how precise he can be and how competitive he is. And as I say, the only person putting pressure on him is himself. So he just needs to try and keep it level-headed and just bring it home. And I'm sure he will. He'll be watching that clock. But Krol, he'll be just consolidated in second place. Deswart third place. The podium looks pretty much sorted out now. These these guys have worked very hard and had a fantastic race this evening. Some opening battles in the first few laps, but since then, apart from Deswart having that early pit stop, which we've talked far too much about tonight, they've pretty much been settled where they are. I think Deswart is the only surprise to me and you, maybe Tim, that he's managed to get back up to third place, but that's credit to his driving ability. And for the third place overall and Top Am by some margin, second Am is in 14th place, so that's a one hell of a gap. I think this is a real marker to be putting out in the first round in these conditions, to say that I'm going to be the Am leader, and I am potentially 11 positions ahead of my nearest rival.
Yeah, and as the standings will show, he is able to challenge for an overall championship. So this third place won't just be a win in class, it will be points towards the overall order. And with 5.5 minutes to go, just what really proving me and you wrong, Steve, in what he's been able to achieve. I think we were kind of expecting to see him come a cropper with some back marker traffic. Well, it wouldn't even be back markers, it would be him taking positions, but he's able to keep his head down, make his pace prove its value, and he's now in third place. As we see, this is Alexandre Witte in the 78 Maserati. He will be looking forward to the checkered flag, I'm sure. That's not an easy car to drive, as we've mentioned before, in the best sunny conditions, Steve, but here in the wet he's certainly making a mark in that car, and I look forward to seeing what he's going to be able to do in some better conditions.
Yeah, absolutely, and with just under 5 minutes on the clock, and he's still got to make his pit stop, so it's going to be interesting to see where he comes out after that pit stop, because he started in 22nd. He was all the way up to round about 11th place, I believe, at one point. And it was looking pretty good for him, but I think he's made one or two mistakes, as you would expect in that car in these conditions. So yeah, when he does his pit stop, I think we're going to see him tumble back down the order into the sort of mid-20s. I think it's going to hurt him quite big. There's some relatively close cars behind.
Well, for comparison, Luke Pound in the 166 Aston Martin has finally made his way to pit lane and has emerged back on track 23rd in the standings. So Witte was a few seconds off that Aston Martin Vantage GT4, so I wouldn't be surprised, like you say, to see this Maserati when it does finally make his way to pit lane. I'm hoping he hasn't forgotten. I wouldn't be surprised to see him outside the top 20, as we have Charlotte Robertson here in the 87, the brightly coloured yellow Ginetta. We have seen her off a couple of times, but who can blame her in some very difficult conditions, and unfortunately coming to blows there with that Aston Martin, and she's sliding wide through Sheen, but gets the car gathered up, rejoins the track safely. I think that's De Swart coming through in third place. But a fantastic drive. That Ginetta is looking slightly dirty and covered in mud, but I'm sure she'll be happy to make her way to the checkered flag with 3 minutes to go, as we cut to Malott here in the number 5 Porsche 718 Cayman. He's got Lermans behind in the 46, Camaro for close company. These two yet to decide who's going to be taking 6th place at the checkered flag. Their pace is pretty similar actually at the moment, so these two are rightfully so on track together. I'm not expecting to see the gap extend. Spenkelink a couple of laps ago I noticed had gone purple, so he's not taking our advice, Steve, in making sure he brings that thing to the line. He wants the fastest lap as well, so they're still pushing.
Everybody wants to prove the commentators wrong, don't they? That's the aim of the game. But these two guys are battling very closely on track, and this is the closest battle, highest up the field, as it were. But the Camaro behind of Lohmans, we saw going through, just on that previous lap, we saw him going through Hawthorns, Westfield, Dingledell and Sheens, and he was, was he taking some big bites out of those curbs. He was really pushing and really sort of taking chances to try and keep up with the Porsche ahead, but I think he's struggling to hang on. And as we were saying earlier, the Porsche does seem to be able to just squat down and get some power out of those corners. And I think that 6th position now for Malott is pretty much safe at the moment, unless he makes a mistake.
And as the timer ticks down, it looks like that when Sam Spenkelink crosses the line, he will be starting his final lap. It was going to be close, actually. It might be worth him just letting off the throttle and letting that over to 0 before he crosses the start finish line one final time. But he's got some traffic to work through. I think that's Luke Pound in the 166 Vantage that we saw pit very late in the game. But Spenkelink is really making a mark here. He's stating his intentions early and very much putting his name out there as the man to beat in this second season of Sim Racing Hub International GT4. I mean, we wouldn't count against seeing a performance like this from him next week, Steve.
Yeah, well, that will be on the 23rd of February at Suzuka, and it'll be interesting to see how the KTM does at Suzuka, because it is a pretty fast track. It favours the faster cars, and it'll be interesting to see how Sam can hustle the car around Suzuka. It's good that the cars have the different balance of performance at various tracks. So it is a challenge for all the drivers at all the tracks. It's going to be good to see how they manage to get the setups and get the cars dialed in. But one thing's for sure, that Sam has really got this car dialed in tonight. He's the man that's mastered these conditions to the best, and we're seeing him now. He's just about to come into Clark Curve for the final time.
Well, we say final time, but he's got 10 seconds to make it back to the finish line. I reckon we could see him go one time. He might let off the throttle as we suggested, which I think he is doing. It's going to be tight. He didn't get the checkered flag that time, I don't think so. He's going to make the field do one more tour, and actually Spenkelink slightly wide on the run into Paddock Hill. It might have caught him off guard, but he's got to do one more. You can see on the dashboard there to the centre console it said final lap on the information screen. So yes, this is indeed going to be the final lap this evening. Spenkelink a healthy lead. He's managed to push that margin up over to 12 seconds to Tim Kroll in the 933, but behind, actually, I'll tell you who has no, he's not closed up, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong part of the timing screen, but then in third place it's that Danny de Swart, Mercedes number 57, who's going to be taking a podium position as it stands as this final lap takes place. But this is a battle yet to be decided. Nicolas Millet in the number 5 Porsche, with Andrew Lomans in the 46 Camaro behind, sticking with him, making a few mistakes, really chancing the lottery of sticking two wheels over the track and more, and it might have to be a mistake that decides this battle for P6.
Yeah, absolutely, and I wonder, I don't think it'll affect the guys, but in dry conditions, when fuels maybe run a little bit tighter, this extra lap of Sam may have caught a few people out. It'll be interesting to see if everybody's fueled enough for these laps and nobody runs out of fuel on this last lap. Also interesting point is, obviously we can see a few guys haven't pitted. They will indeed pick up a post-race penalty, if not a disqualification, for not having pitted. I'm not sure if it's a disqualification or actually a very hefty time penalty at the end, so that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and as actually we saw, there we go, there is your race winner this evening then. Sam Spenkelink crosses the line. He was made to do one extra lap, but that didn't pose an extra challenge. He crosses the start finish line to take the checkered flag, a healthy 12 seconds ahead of Tim Kroll in the 933 Porsche behind. Danny de Swart rounds out the podium in third place with the 57 Mercedes. Then it's Mikkel Hutman in the 84 Camaro takes fourth, followed by Adrien Delors in the number 6. Then we have Malott here, who manages to hold on to that sixth place in the number 5 Cayman, ahead of Arjen Lermans in the 46 Camaro. Then we have Dennis Werkman rounding out the top 8 with the number 4 Porsche, ahead of Andre Brendel in the 331 Camaro, and it's Yannick Valenduk who made the best of that slightly later pit stop to finish in 10th position. Then Patrick Tracté started around the outskirts of the top 10, and he'll be finishing 11th in the 313 Ginetta. Then it's Jan-Paul Eikelenboom in the 31 Mercedes, ahead of Lee Mosley, who will take second place in the AM category. Some notable positions behind from Danny de Zwart up in third. Then it's Alexander Witter in the 78 Maserati, but as we noted, yet to pit, and we did see a sizable penalty added there on the timing screen on the left hand side, so that failure to make a stop is really going to count against him. But just quickly to run through the rest of the order: Denise Pope rounds out the top 15. Xander Valley in the 718 Cayman is 16th ahead of Manuel Willems. It is then Evan Nathas, Oliver Anderson and Daniel Herkstra who started further up the order, and we saw his 66 Aston Martin Vantage battling with several other cars, but he manages to finish in the top 20. Van Weygen in 21st, Luke Pound 22nd, Stefan Arvidsson in the 39 Ginetta in 23rd, Martin Kettles in the 82 Aston Martin in 24th, with Arjen van der Linden rounding out your top 25. Then it's Charlotte Robertson, Daniel Belkamp, Dimitri Schenk, Natalie Lee and Mark Dieters, who looked like those final three finished the race in the pit lane or maybe stopped just around the halfway mark. But anyway, Steve, a fantastic opening round, a very interesting strategic battle between really the top 5 positions up there, but some names already throwing their hat into the ring as someone to consider for the championship come season end.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's always interesting when we jump into these into our fellow communities to help commentate and broadcast these races with them is we're thrown into the mix, and not knowing some of these drivers, not knowing quite a lot of the drivers, we do know a few of them, so it's always interesting to see how things shake out in the results. Difficult to say that the conditions tonight were very difficult, so is that going to mean that Sem's going to be the fastest every week? I think not. I think maybe he won't have that advantage all the time. I think in dry conditions the battle for the front could be closer. Again, Sem might like to prove me wrong, probably will. But it's been a good race. It's opened up our eyes to a few of the drivers that are very, very capable drivers, because let's not make no bones about it. Yes, Sem won the race this evening, but all of those guys finishing deserve some a round of applause, because that was a difficult race, and relatively speaking we didn't see that many accidents, and certainly the overtakes, the racing was of a very high standard and very, very clean. I think we're going to hang on for a little bit just to see if we get any interviews. We may have some drivers wanting to talk to us, but first of all, I think they'll all be catching their breath after what was a very intense 60-minute race. But as I say that, I see Sem's jumped into the green room, so I'll drag him into the comms box if you want to ask him those questions, Tim.
Well, I will do, Steve. So let's bring in to the room then our race winner of the opening round of the Sim Racing Hub International second season of the GT4s. Sem, if you can hear us okay, a very controlled race from yourself. It looked like maybe there was just one mistake towards the end in that final 10 minutes, but a very comfortable pole position, and then a nice run from lights to flag in some difficult conditions.
Yeah, definitely. So at the end, maybe a bit too much hot lapping going on, and spun the car once, but kept it out of the wall. Luckily, had quite some gap to P2, so it was safe to go. Of course, lost the position at the start to Tim, but managed to get it back nicely into, I believe it was turn 4. So from there on it was just having my own pace, and turned out good.
Like you say, Sam, you lost that position at the start. It was certainly an interesting getaway from the line. It seemed like you were being held for quite a long time, and Tim was actually alongside you. So, how did you feel heading into Paddock Hill Bend, losing that first position?
Yeah, so I think I was a bit slow off the line myself, so it was my own fault. I was watching my mirrors a bit too much, and Tim, of course, had a good start. But I wasn't too worried. Long race to go. P2 was still solid, and I knew that would be an opportunity. So, I was still going easy.
So looking forward to the next race then, which is Suzuka. Obviously, it's a very different track to the circuit you had to deal with tonight. Soaking wet, Brands Hatch. How do you feel about the second round? How do you think the KTM will fare at a slightly longer and very unique Grand Prix circuit?
Yeah, absolutely love the track Suzuka, but yeah, of course the KTM with its little lawnmower engine, it will definitely struggle there. So if it's going to be a dry race, then it's going to be difficult, especially with the added ballast. Then yeah, I'm definitely going to struggle, but it's going to be rough with those quick Porsches and BMWs and Chevrolets behind. So looking forward to it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Sam, and congratulations again for the race victory tonight. I look forward to seeing what you can do next time out at Suzuka.
Thank you very much, boys.
Yeah, well done, Sam. Great race.
Cheers.
So let's bring in Steve as well, waiting in the green room. We have the man in second place. This is Tim Krul. Tim, a very exciting race from yourself. You managed to get Sam at the start there. Did you think you had enough to keep him behind?
Mate, it was from the qualifying on. He had like 6 or 7 tenths per lap. It was nah. I was waiting for him to pass me again.
I was going to say, I didn't want to actually say it, but it was actually 8 tenths in qualifying. Sorry to rub salt into the wound.
Don't need to rub it in. Nah, it's fine. He was too quick.
But a fantastic race from then on. You managed to get your head down, and really that second place from those early stages onwards was yours. How was your race inside the cockpit? Difficult conditions, and it's not exactly an easy one to start the championship with torrential rain at Brands Hatch.
Oh man, last week I did GT3 was also rain, and I'm racing in VR, so yeah, it was cold in the sim, but it's freaking hot in the chair. No, it was kind of difficult, but I found a decent pace because the what's his name, the guy on P1, I forgot his name, sorry, but
Seb.
he just kept setting so fast laps, and I was like, yeah, I can go faster, but I had room, so I just did my laps, did it safe, and P2. I mean, it's still good. I'm still happy. So yeah.
So really, was your strategy in that race? We know we saw you take the lead at the start, but was it just about getting to the checkered flag and bagging some good points to start your season?
Yeah, a good first result. I'm happy with P2. So I just wanted to finish in top 5 once I started in the top 2, to be honest. So. Yeah, the goal was to finish first and without incidents, and I happened to do it, even P2. So yeah,
fantastic job, and looking forward to the next race at Suzuka. Do you think you'll be able to take the challenge to Sam once again?
Oof. The rain is a great equalizer, so it's gonna be. Yeah. Let's see. It's not one of my best tracks, so it's gonna be difficult.
Okay, well, we look forward to seeing you next time out. Thank you very much, Tim.
If I could just ask you a question, Tim. Obviously, at the beginning, you got the jump on Sem at the start, as he's just said himself. He just got a bad start, and that was his own fault. He was a bit slow off the line. When he got past you, it looked like for a couple of corners you were trying to go with him, and that led to you running wide and maybe just understeering a little bit, being a bit too eager with the throttle, as it were. Was there a point where you were thinking, I'm going to try keep up, and you had to sort of rein yourself in and just think, I've got to drive my own race here and just calm down a little bit?
Yeah, actually, yeah, it's true. I thought I could maybe keep in a slipstream, but then immediately I got so close to the edges and the white lines, and some corners it gets so close, like it's just 1 centimeter or feet to the wrong side, and you instantly, like turn around. So. I even fell back to P3 for a second, and then he went into pits. I'm not sure what happened. Maybe he took too less fuel or something. Maybe he took his qualifying setup. But once P1 was just too quick. So like you said, I was like, just hold on to P2, do my laps, and be safe.
Yeah, well, it's a long championship, isn't it? And that's round 1. So to get a podium in these conditions at round 1, it's very impressive driving from all of you guys. So hats off and a round of applause to everybody on the podium from me. And I think, Tim, we have got our 3rd place man in here now, Danny Deswart. Well done, Danny.
Yes, thank you.
Congrats, man, as well.
So Danny, it was we saw you really rolled the dice with an alternate strategy compared to the others. What was the thinking behind that? I mean, pitting with after 10 minutes, 50 minutes still to go in the race, was that always your game plan, or were you hit with some unforeseen circumstances?
No, it was a mistake for my. I didn't fuel up, so I have only 12 liters of fuel because of the qualifying, and I forgot to fill it up. So yeah, I did around 7 laps or so, and yeah, I must come in. So
I'm sure if you watch the stream back, you might hear Steve and myself questioning why you pitted so early, but that does explain why if you've taken too little fuel. But
it was my plan.
It seemed to work out in the end, though, to pick up third place from well outside the top 20. You must be very happy to see yourself, finding a way towards the sharp end in the final 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, it was great. So from all the way back to drive up front again. So it was very exciting, and yeah, it was never boring.
I did think, to be honest, when you've just said that, I thought, he's a top AM driver, third on the podium. You were maybe after the first couple of laps thinking this is too easy. I'm going to pit now and make it a little bit more interesting and fight my way through the field back to the front again. But yeah, we were questioning that strategy, and it's good to know that it wasn't really intentional. But absolutely, like Tim said, it was a really good drive and difficult to keep clean and to make the overtakes clean this evening, because obviously at Brands Hatch the racing line crosses from side to side on the track so many times, and as Tim was saying there, the white lines and the curbs were so treacherous, so you certainly didn't have the easiest race tonight, but you did very, very well there, and congratulations on being the top AM driver as well as the third place on the podium.
Yes, thank you very much. It was very fun.
Also, if I can break in a bit, it's how did you manage to make your tires go 50 minutes and even doing overtakes and all? That's very good.
Yeah, I don't know. I drive very smooth, I think, and the overtakes didn't were quite easy, but yeah, I don't know. The track, it was a little bit cool, I think, and yeah, I never locked up or anything, or didn't make any big mistakes. So
Great stuff. Well, fantastic job from all three of you, from our podium finishers. Feel free to leave the broadcasting room, but once again, congratulations from Steve and myself for a fantastic job first time out. I look forward to seeing all of you racing next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Well done, guys.
bye bye.
So a fantastic race, Steve, and as we heard from a number of the drivers there, the conditions were tricky, and a lot of them happy just to make the checkered flag, and making it in a podium position, an added bonus really on that.
Oh, absolutely, and what a bonus. I mean, at the end of the day, as we said in the interview room there, that is round one of this championship. 8 more rounds to go, I think, if I just quickly count them up there. Yeah, we've got Suzuka on the 23rd of February. We then go to Imola in March, 23rd of March. Then we have Spa, 6th of April. Zolder, 20th of April. Zandvoort, 11th of May. Silverstone, 25th of May. Mazzano, the 22nd of June. And we finish off the GT4s at the Nürburgring on the 6th of July. So there is lots and lots of racing action to come. And tonight, in those conditions, as ever, when it's torrential like that, it's all about bringing the car home. To score points, you've got to finish the race. So to finish on the podium is a bonus. It's a massive bonus for those guys. But, that's everybody's aim tonight, I'm pretty sure, was just to finish the race. Maybe apart from Sem, when he saw that his qualifying pace was so much faster than everybody else's, maybe he was the man that was really nailed on trying to get that win. We heard from Tim in the interview there, he knew it was a matter of time before Sem came back at him, and he tried to stay with him for a couple of corners, and as he said, he was risking too much, so he literally, he more or less settled for second place straight away. It was was a race of attrition. They needed to bring the car home and they needed to be on the track, and all those guys did that tonight. It was absolutely great race to watch. Fantastic battles, very clean, and some very precise and good driving tonight.
Indeed. So testament to all the drivers that took part tonight for playing part in what was a brilliant opening chapter for this second season of the Sim Racing Hub International GT4 Championship. If you want to get involved, there's the link on screen. You can join us at SRHI.EU. If you want to get involved, you can join the Discord and join these guys out on track. But thank you very much for joining us. If you're watching on YouTube, a lot of guys in the chat enjoying the racing action. I'm sure we shall see you soon in 2 weeks' time. Same time, same place for round 2 at Suzuka. Steve, closing statement from you. What do you think we'll see next time out when we head to Suzuka?
I think we'll see more of the Porsches up front. I think the Mercedes will run well at the front. The Aston Martin, I think we'll see a closer race overall if it's dry. That's the big if. I think Sem's quite right. He may struggle, but great racing all the same. I think we'll see some good racing, but I think the podium may be shaken up a little bit. We might see a few different drivers battling. We haven't seen the best of all of them yet because those conditions this evening were very, very difficult. So I think it's a reset. Watch them all at Suzuka and see what happens. But it's been an absolute pleasure working with you tonight, Tim, and it's been some fantastic racing.
Thank you, Steve. So yeah, a long way still to go in this one. So from Steve Proudly and myself, Tim Fulbrook here in the comms box, thank you very much for joining us. Stay healthy and good night.